When I was just starting out, I had one simple desire: to prove that I was capable of more than what that small town in Oklahoma had to offer, where all dreams ended with a steady salary and a quiet suburban home. America always sells the legend: if you work hard enough, the universe will open doors for you. I believed in it so much that I saw nothing around me but my goal. I moved to San Francisco with 2 suitcases, a laptop I bought on credit, and the confidence that success was just a matter of nights spent coding and making presentations. The first few years were tough: a cheap room, constant beer meetings with investors who promised to call and then disappeared, sleepless marathon nights, working on the kitchen table because I didn't have a desk at the time. But I was growing. Every new contract, every successful deal lifted me higher. When my startup finally attracted investment, I tasted success for the first time. The media began to write short articles about me, invitations poured in one after another, and people who had not noticed me before began to call me an interesting person. In America, status changes quickly. Yesterday you are a nobody, today you are someone people want to have coffee with. I got married around that time. She was calm, warm, down to earth, the embodiment of stability in a world where everything around me seemed like a chase after something unstable and too fast. She supported me, listened to my late-night ideas, and accepted that I was always on call and in meetings. At the time, I sincerely believed that I was building our future together. But in reality, I was building empires inside my head. And the higher I climbed, the more it seemed that life was a marathon where the reward was not peace of mind, but new horizons, new challenges, new people who saw in me not just a man, but an opportunity, a ticket to another world. That was the beginning. The point at which money began to come faster than I could comprehend its power. The point where I still thought that success made a person better. I didn't understand then that sometimes it just makes them different. When the money started coming in, I realized that with it came not only freedom, but also new boundaries. I remember the first time this feeling really hit me. A corporate party in Los Angeles, the roof of a skyscraper, the sunset over the city, champagne in the hands of people I barely knew, but who laughed as if they had known me all their lives. There was an air of luxury, and it smelled of temptation. It seems that in America, wealth is not just a resource, it is a ticket to a world where all prohibitions seem conditional. Business trips to New York, Miami, Aspen, each of them became almost a ritual. In luxury hotels, I met women and men who knew what they wanted and didn't ask for permission. At first, I resisted. Then I realized that resistance was simply exhausting. Where there is money and power, temptation follows like a shadow, inseparable from you. Sometimes it quietly pushes you to do things you would never do at home. And it became a game. Not an evil game, but a kind of experiment. Who am I in a world where no one sees me as I am at home? During the day, I was a husband who brought home fresh flowers and cooked dinners to surprise his wife. At night, I was someone else, a man who left the hotel through the back door, leaving behind the scent of expensive cologne and a subtle hint of mystery. I know that in America this looks like a movie script, a successful man, wealth, parties, and secret affairs. But at that moment, it seemed like part of the normal rhythm of life. Money made accessible what had previously been only a fantasy. It opened doors to a world where every encounter could be the promise of something forbidden. And I opened those doors because I could. Surprisingly, it didn't make me feel guilty right away. It was more of a feeling of power, a feeling that I was capable of being in 2 worlds at once. I would come home with a smile, confident that everything was under control. I had no desire to destroy my family, but I understood that the world had become wider, and I had become a different person within that world. I lived in 2 worlds at the same time, and it was a strangely exciting feeling. During the day, I was a successful husband and partner, smiling in photos for Instagram, planning trips together, discussing renovations and evening dinners with my wife. My life looked perfect from the outside, and that's what I enjoyed. People saw me as someone who had it all: a job, money, a family, stability. They had no idea that behind this mask lay a different rhythm of life, a completely different level of freedom and temptation. At night, I became someone completely different. I got out of cars we never had at home and opened the doors of rooms in five-star hotels, where women who knew the price of my success and asked for nothing more were waiting for me. They didn't want my love. My attention was enough for them, my stories about New York and Miami, about business plans and endless negotiations. I gave them that, and in return I got the feeling that no one knew who I really was. In those moments, I felt absolute power and freedom. The freedom to be myself, but not the person they knew at home. It was like a secret club where no one else was allowed except you. I didn't consider myself a villain. For me, it wasn't betrayal in the classic sense. It was a parallel world where I simply existed by my own rules. Sometimes I caught myself thinking that it might be too easy, that it was too easy to separate the two lives. And yet, when I returned home after those nights, I felt satisfied. My wife smiled, talked about ordinary things, and I just listened, participating in her world. She didn't know and probably didn't want to know. And I lived with this balance, which seemed almost perfect. The double life became a habit. It required energy, constant control, and the ability to keep up appearances. But, to be honest, I understood that this habit made me who I am, successful, confident, a little dangerous, and incredibly alive. Inside, I was already confident that I could manage my time, my desires, my boundaries. And no one, not even the woman closest to me, could change that. My wife never made a scene, never checked my phone, and never asked direct questions. Sometimes I caught her gaze. It was special, as if she sensed something I didn't want to admit to myself. Women always sense more than we think. And at that moment, I began to realize that maybe she knew more than I thought. But we lived in a strange harmony. I lived my secret nights, and she lived her feeling that everything was fine. Maybe she just chose not to notice. Sometimes it was like a silent agreement where words were unnecessary and feelings told everything. Sometimes I would come home with a bag of gifts, with new stories from my business trips, and I would see her smiling, listening to me, and my heart would ache because I was hiding behind this facade. I often wondered if she felt the emptiness that my double life created. I don't know if she realized that the world I frequented at night existed. There were moments when I noticed her quiet sadness or her gaze lingering longer than usual, as if she were trying to see inside me. But she never asked directly, never interrogated me. And, to be honest, that made everything even easier. I didn't feel trapped, and perhaps that allowed us to continue living together without destruction. On the other hand, I understood that true intimacy is not just about shared dinners and smiles and photographs. True intimacy implies truth, and I kept the truth deep inside myself. I sometimes wondered, did she respect my freedom or just put up with it? Or was it her own way of coping with what she felt but never said? Women often sense things that we men try to hide behind success and charisma. In this game of silence and guesswork, I was a master, but she was an unknown mystery. That's how we lived. She felt harmony and warmth, while I felt like I could be at home and in another world at the same time. Sometimes it seemed like a miracle, sometimes like torture, but never like obvious guilt. She didn't find out. Or she allowed herself not to find out. And I continued to live between these two realities, enjoying and fearing at the same time. I can't say that I regret that time. Perhaps this is what makes the story difficult for other people to understand. In society, it is accepted that cheating is betrayal, a sin, the end of a relationship. But for me, it was part of life, part of my ambition, part of the energy that drove me forward. Every new acquaintance, every encounter was not just a pleasure, it was a game, a test of my own control, of my understanding of who I am in a world where almost everything is accessible. Every time I returned home, I felt a double reality: my wife's smile, the comfort of our home, the stability we had built together, and memories of a night that was completely different. These two lives existed in parallel, but never intersected in the literal sense. And, to be honest, that feeling of freedom was sweet. I knew the boundaries, I knew the rules, I knew I wouldn't destroy what was dear to us. Many people ask me today, didn't you feel guilty? Yes, sometimes a shadow flashed through my mind. But guilt is a feeling that comes when you realize you've done something wrong. I saw it as part of my story, part of a time filled with temptations, ambitions, and trials. For me, it was like a journey. I tried everything life had to offer, and sometimes I went beyond what was permissible. I understood that it wasn't easy for my wife. Women sense these things. They notice the tension, sometimes without words. But she chose to trust the world we live in, to trust me, one way or another. I sometimes thought that this was stronger than any frankness, than talking about what was happening on the side. Perhaps this was her way of coping with reality, and perhaps this was what allowed us to stay together. I don't justify my actions. But I know that I have no regrets. It was a period of my life that made me who I am today, successful, confident, a little dangerous, and very alive. Those affairs, those encounters, those secret nights were part of the experience, part of the energy that drove me, that made me whole. They didn't happen instead of loving her, but alongside it. And I never hid that from myself. Now we are still together. We smile in photos, hold hands at family events, say, "I love you," to each other before bed. From the outside, it seems that our life is perfect, that we are living the way we dreamed. People see stability, success, harmony. But inside me, there is sometimes a silence that is too loud to ignore. It is a silence that reminds me that the past leaves a mark, even if no one knows the details. I often think about the price people pay for living a double life. It's not exposure or scandals. No, that's not the worst part. The highest price is knowing that you alone hold the truth that no one else will ever see. I know my nights, my choices, my secrets. I know the people I loved fleetingly, the people who came into my life for an hour, a night, or a week. I know that it didn't destroy our marriage, but it left a thin layer of unspoken words in it that can sometimes be felt when we sit together in silence. Sometimes I catch myself thinking, what if she knew everything? Maybe it would have destroyed us. Maybe it would have made us stronger. No one knows the answer. But I know that we live holding on to what we have, and at the same time, each of us keeps our little secrets. I am often amazed by her patience, her intuition, her strength, to be with me, knowing that the world I live in does not always coincide with the one she sees. And here's what I've realized. Sometimes the real price is not guilt, not loss of trust, but the fact that you carry the truth inside you. You continue to live, continue to love, continue to be part of the world you created. And despite everything, despite the doubts and nights spent alone or in someone else's arms, I remain who I am. Successful, free, and a little dangerous, but still a husband who comes home to a woman who may feel a lot, but still chooses us. This is a story about freedom and boundaries, about temptation and responsibility, about choice and consequences, about how sometimes love lives not only in revelations, but also in silence. And in this silence, we continue to live, together, no matter what.